Hey Rigo, let's take a look at your week 3 assignment 2 drawings. Both drawings are very, very good. Perspective looks good in both of them, and I think you're doing a great job with the coloring and the textural work and integrating them together to create something very convincing. The texture work really catches my eye because it's very understated but very effective. In the one point, I think we get a little bit of a better view of it. It comes across as a little bit cleaner, and it really shows just a nice kind of subtle working. It feels very convincing to me, the way that the grain kind of flows and moves across the surface, and how each kind of piece of wood that makes up, the cabinetry or the drawers move the grain in a different direction. And it's a nice eye for detail. I think a lot of people, when they apply texture, they kind of consider the entirety of a surface and just go all out and don't really think about how something is made, how a structure is actually created or crafted. And so it's nice to see, these little touches. Shadows and highlights as well, a little bit of some kind of glossiness on the top. Highlights on the knobs and on specific parts of your kind of front door are great, and even seeing a hinge, I think, which is a big rarity. The coloring is helping out a lot also. It's a good natural color. It fits within, I think, this kind of wood nicely. I think value-wise, the only kind of question for me is this odd shadow, and I'm not exactly sure what's kind of going on there, but otherwise it works out fine. You've got highlights on the top but not as many on the front plane. It is darker on the one side, which is a nice touch, and then it's the same thing for here. The only thing that actually catches my eye as I kind of move between these two is that they do have a kind of a distinctly different kind of feel in terms of the height and the width of them. The 2-point perspective, it feels like a much squatter cabinet or drawer or nightstand or whatever it is. It feels a little bit longer, and it feels much, much shorter than what we're seeing with the 1 point. And little things like the central kind of part of the door feels kind of like something like this to me here, whereas in this one it's obviously much more kind of square-like, even though it's still a rectangle. It's not actually a big thing, and it has absolutely nothing to do with topics like what you would need to do as you move on to the next assignment, but there is a definite distinction between the two of them as you kind of move back and forth. In terms of what you want to do as you move on to the next part of the assignment, I'm not sure there's much you need to do to the actual object itself, and more just kind of to do with the environment that you're going to include it in. Obviously, you'll want much more of this to be dealt with around the object, making sure you have a ground plane, a wall. Usually most ground planes have some form of texture on them, whether it's a carpeting, whether it's a tiling, whether it's a laminate, and having something on the wall to help kind of break up the space is helpful, but not necessarily required. I think getting the cast shadow to interact with the environment as well is something that you'll have to think about as you kind of work that into it. But it's a very good series of objects, and I think it does a great job of kind of incorporating the last couple of weeks into a pretty concise little package.